Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 19th of September 2023. Right, everyone, let's get into it. So first off today, we have an update on how the VDF or verifiable delay function research is going in the Ethereum research land. Now, this has been research that's been ongoing for quite a while now, since I think 2019. So it's been pretty much 4 years since this research began. And it was basically a research that began because there is a source of randomness in the beacon chain that we call RANDAO. And RANDAO isn't perfect. It is not perfect randomness. There is a way to bias it to a small degree, as is kind of said here. But from my knowledge, it's actually really difficult to bias it. But there is still a way to bias it in some way. But it's difficult to do. Now, to replace RANDAO, the idea of VDFs or verifiable delay functions came to be. And I remember Justin Drake used to talk about this a lot more than he does recently. But yeah, so there's an update here that was published or that was shared on Twitter by Asunzo. And it was published by a bunch of different people here, basically saying, I mean, it's not too long of an update, but the TLDR is that, I guess, like right now, VDF doesn't seem like the solution. They say here, the cryptography research team agrees that a better understanding of VDFs is essential if we are to continue down this design avenue. At present, we do not recommend using VDFs within Ethereum. Ongoing research and substantial improvements are important factors in potentially revising our perspective on this topic in the future. So yeah, it's just not up to scratch yet. It's not really purpose built or fit for purpose for what Ethereum needs. So more research will be done on that, as well as more research just generally and generating randomness. Generating true randomness is quite hard, especially in a distributed fashion. Definitely beyond my kind of pay grade, so to speak, in terms of understanding the technicals of it. But yeah, RANDAO's been with us in the beacon chain since it went live on December 1st, 2020. And it looks like it will be with us into the future. So you can read the, I guess, entire report here. It's linked in this ETH research post. It's pretty lengthy, the report, and I'm sure it is extremely technical and mathematical, as you can see by all these equations that I have absolutely no idea how to read, of course. But you can go check that out, or you can just read the small little TLDR here. I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to do so. Alright, so as you guys know, there was a bug that I mentioned yesterday in Geth version 1.13 that was causing block proposals to be missed. And Rated.network put out a good little tweet thread today showing that the network effectiveness went down overall because of this bug. So it went down to about 93.5% from its usual, I think, 98%. And I saw some people comment on this saying this doesn't really make sense because their own validators didn't go down that much, and it shouldn't, and the missed block proposal shouldn't have had that much of a hit to network effectiveness. But I think what people need to understand is that network effectiveness, as measured by Rated.network, is based on their own methodology here. And I'm bringing this up here for you to see. So this is how the Rated.network website measures effectiveness of the overall network. So they measure it as proposal effectiveness, attestation effectiveness, and slashing record. So these three things basically come together to make what they call the rated validator effectiveness rating, aka RAVER, and that's what they're kind of referencing here. So it is different to things that you might see on the Beacon Chain website, for example, that has its own effectiveness rating there. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that for people that may have been confused by that. Rated.network's effectiveness rating it's based on its own methodology here. But as I said yesterday, if people upgrade to the hotfix version of Geth or basically downgrade back to version 1.12 whatever, that issue will go away and the network will heal itself. But again, this is the, I guess, importance of client diversity, as Rated kind of highlights here, in that, Geth isn't 100% of the network, right? So it is still most of the network, but it's not 100% of the network. And obviously, MEV Boost as well is running, so it wasn't that big of a deal because block proposals were going through MEV Boost, but still, if overall effectiveness came down, but it should trend back up over time there. And you can go give this little thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, moving on to probably the biggest news of the last 24 hours is that Canto, the layer 1 blockchain, is transitioning to being a layer 2 on Ethereum. Now, they're going to be using Polygon's ZK technology and their chain development kit in order to do this. And they say here, this ZK chain will be dedicated to real-world assets in support of the next wave of application layer adoption via neo-finance. Now, I don't know if that's a term that Canto has come up with or if that's a term that's been around for a while. I've seen it referenced as something different, not Neo Finance before, but I guess that's what they're calling it here. But yeah, guys, I mean, I think I said this a while ago that Canto was one of my top candidates for things that would become a layer 2, for layer 1s that would become a layer 2. So this was not surprising or shocking to me at all. I woke up to this today and I had people tagging me in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. I was like, yep, okay, that tracks. That is not a surprise to me. And I think, there's a few others out there that I've mentioned before as my top candidates. Number one, I think now at the top of my list is Gnosis Chain. I feel like Gnosis Chain is going to become a layer 2. It doesn't really make much sense for it to continue being a layer 1. And they're already building a layer 2 on top of Gnosis Chain, using Polygon's technology, which I remember I covered and thought it was weird at the time. But they're my top candidate for the next L1 to become an L2. And then, of course, Binance Chain and Tron, in my eyes, should become L2s. But I'm on the fence about whether they'll actually become L2s, especially Tron. It doesn't seem like something that would happen there. But hey, I'm willing to be kind of proven wrong there. But yeah, so essentially as I mentioned, what Canto wants to do with this ZK powered L2 conversion that they're doing here, as I said, they want to dedicate this to real world assets, something they're calling Neo Finance, in order to push real world assets not just on layer 1, but push them up to kind of layer 2 here. And I think this is a good little niche to fall into, because as I've said before, just because a layer 1 becomes a layer 2 doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be successful, doesn't mean that it's automatically going to find product market fit, and the layer 2 space is getting real crowded. I mean, it is super crowded now. It doesn't matter if it's an app chain or a generalized chain, it is quite crowded right now, which I think is fine, to be honest. Like, I'd rather see that than a million different L1s get spun up. But generally, changing your product to an L2 or changing your chain to an L2 is not going to give you product market fit. In saying that, I do think real world assets are definitely one of the next big waves to come to crypto. It's being enabled by a bunch of different products and services out there. Obviously, there are middleware protocols as well, such as Chainlink, that are playing a big role there. And there's also Maker bringing a lot of real-world assets on-chain. But if Canto can carve out a niche here and become like the real-world asset layer 2, where people issue these real-world assets on Canto's L2, and then you can bridge and you can share liquidity and be interoperable with the rest of the Polygon kind of ecosystem as well, and beyond that, I think that's really positive there. But it remains to be seen, right? I think that, I'm not trying to shit on Canto here, but I think that up until this point, as a layer 1, Canto failed to kind of take off, really. I think it got an initial kind of burst of hype around, an initial burst of activity, but then after that, it kind of like died off, basically. So it remains to be seen if converting to a layer 2 and focusing on this real world assets thing is going to basically bring more activity back to the chain. But as I said before, I think that chains have a much better chance of gaining activity as a layer 2 than they do as a layer 1. But fundamentally, if the chain or what's being built on there doesn't have product market fit, it's not going to change anything, right? And I think I've been pretty consistent with that view over the past few months at least, and especially over the past few years here. So anyway, you can go check out Canto's announcement for yourself. There's a blog post, of course, and there's a thread. I'll link that in the YouTube description for you to do so. All right, so Optimism announced OP Airdrop number 3 today. So 19 million OP has been allocated to over 31,000 unique addresses to reward positive sum governance participation in the collective. So you can check out the eligibility criteria in this thread in the documents that they've linked here, but the eligibility criteria was actually given as a TLDR in the Daily Gwei Discord channel by Tempateki here, who says the requirement was to have your OP tokens delegated to someone, so delegated to one of the governance participants. If you had them delegated to an active delegate, you got 2 times the rewards, and the more OP tokens you already had, the more you got in this airdrop. Now, I ended up receiving a pretty sizable airdrop from this, just to use me as an example of I don't know what the maximum was, but I ended up getting 20,000 OP tokens, so obviously not a small sum of OP tokens there, but I want to explain like why that was the case. I didn't farm the airdrop. I actually did really nothing for that, right? I didn't try to farm it. I didn't try to game it or anything like that. But the reason I got it was because my original airdrop that I got as part of when Optimism first issued their token, I think I got 32,000 OP, which was the maximum at the time. I didn't sell them. I immediately, after I claimed them, delegated them to Polygon, right? You guys know Polygon. I've talked about them a bunch of times on the Refuel, and they've been very active in Optimism governance. So that's why I think that I got so much OP tokens, is because I didn't sell the first drop that I got. I delegated all of it to Polygon, who was very active in governance, and it was a sizable kind of delegation there. So yeah, and that's why I was able to get that. But in saying that, you should go check if you're eligible, of course. And also, this is not an airdrop to claim. That was the only thing that I kind of got annoyed about, because for me, I like the way it works where I am in Australia. When you get taxed on these things, it happens when you kind of like claim them, right? When you claim the airdrop, and usually you claim an airdrop, but with this airdrop, it was deposited directly into your account. So I went to Sassel, it was on Sassel.eth for me. So I went there and I'm like, oh, okay, the tokens are already in my account here. That means I owe tax on them at the value that is today. So I owe tax on that OP airdrop as it was valued today, which is annoying because I would rather have claimed it later or something like that just to optimize for tax. But unfortunately, it was just airdropped and there was no claims process here. So just keep that in mind as well. There are and for scams too. If you see any scams out there claiming that you have to claim this OP airdrop, you don't. If you got an allocation, it has been allocated to your address. It has been airdropped to you already directly on your address, and you can see that by searching your address on an Optimism mainnet block explorer, not on Etherscan. It has to be on an Optimism mainnet explorer, because obviously it was airdropped on the OP mainnet chain and not the Ethereum main chain. Just in case you get confused about that, you can go check out that there. But yeah, it'll be waiting for you. And also, as I said, because I think the way it works in Australia is the way it works in a lot of places, where as soon as the, I guess, funds are in your control, it's taxed. And for me in Australia, it's income tax. So basically, you should check that as well, because you may owe taxes on that too, depending on obviously your jurisdiction and things like that. So anyway, I'll link Optimism's tweet thread in the YouTube description below, and you can check it out for yourself in order to see if you are eligible for this airdrop. All right, so Mark Boyron here, the Chief Executive Officer of Polygon, CEO of Polygon here, put together a big tweet today, or not too big of a tweet, but a tweet today, basically running through what Polygon 2.0 is. And there has been a bit of confusion around this. I actually think that the confusion stems from the fact that it is quite a substantial change to Polygon, and I've explained bits and pieces of it before on the Refuel. And of course, I think I said the other day that I highly recommend going and giving the podcast that Mihailo and Sandeep, two of the co-founders of Polygon, on Bankless, they did a podcast all about Polygon 2.0, and it gives a really great overview of what they hope to achieve here. But really, the TLDR is that there are kind of three spokes to the Polygon 2.0 upgrade here. There's the governance spoke, there's changing Matic to Pol, so upgrading the Matic token to the Pol token, and also upgrading the Polygon POS chain to a zkVM, basically, and to a Validium-like construction. And that's exactly what Mark has outlined here. So you can go give this tweet a read for full details on that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But as I said, it is a substantial change to the way Polygon is today and what it wants to be in the future, but it really is the Polygon vision. I mean, this was the original vision that I remember Mihailo running me through in 2019. And you guys know, I've talked about this on the Refuel before, but and this is why I became an advisor to Polygon, was because Mihailo was a good friend of mine, still is a good friend of mine. But I was talking to him in 2019 about this, and I remember him saying at the time, this Polygon thing, what his vision for it was, why he thinks that it's necessary, and this was all the way back in 2019. And finally, we're at the point where Polygon 2.0 is living up to his vision there, and is really the end game for the Polygon ecosystem. Just like how in Ethereum, Vitalik spoke about what Ethereum looks like today a very long time ago. Obviously, sharding has changed a bit and pivoted a bit here and there, but so has Polygon over time, right? Originally, they were going to do all sorts of chains. They were going to do plasma chains and optimistic rollups and ZK chains, but now they're really doing just the ZK stuff. They're all in on that, and they're making this super chain thing that connects them all, which they're calling supernets, right? Superchain is Optimism's name for their thing, which is a very similar thing to what Polygon wants to do with the supernets thing, and connecting all the chains together and making them all interoperable. So yeah, that's kind of like the end game kind of vision that has been there for the last, I think, 4 years. I mean, I remember when Mihailo was telling me about it, it was around this time, actually. I think it was maybe October 2019 when I was at DAppCon in Berlin. So that's how long this has been coming here. So that's why it's such an exciting upgrade, and it really does reflect the I guess like ETH2 upgrade as well. It's kind of a mirror of that, because The ETH 2.0 upgrade was also very confusing to people because it changed a bunch of times, right? Originally, we had sharding and proof of stake and all that stuff in between coming as like one big upgrade. Then we split it up into different phases. And for those of you out there who've been around for a while, you remember that the phases were phase 0, which was going to be proof of stake, and then you have phase 1, which is going to be the first shard chains, and then phase 1.5, which was going to be like if I'm remembering correctly, more shard chains being added. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then phase 2, which I believe was going to be like WASM and things like that. So it was an amalgamation of stuff. And then after that, we just basically pivoted again and said, okay, well, ETH 2 is really just going to be the merge. And that's what it was. We merged the two chains together, and then we pivoted sharding to just do data sharding. Things like dank sharding is pure data sharding, and then we pushed everything else to the layer 2s. And I think in a similar kind of vein here, what Polygon became eventually with this Polygon 2.0 upgrade is that they just stopped focusing on all the stuff, and they just hyper-focused on the ZK stuff and hyper-focused on making sure that everything was interoperable and making sure that anyone could build a chain using Polygon's technology and settle all that down to Ethereum. So that's why I'm personally most excited about the Polygon 2.0 vision, is because I feel like it's the vision that makes the most sense. I am also definitely excited about the other ecosystems, like obviously Optimism and Arbitrum and the other L2 ecosystems out there, ZK Sync, because they're all doing different things, and really we're just going to get the best outcome at the end of the day. And I think I've said this for a while now, is that the reason I'm most bullish on the layer 2 ecosystem is because we get a Cambrian explosion of innovation that is funded. Like, that's the most important thing here. This is innovation that is funded, and funded in a really, really big way by venture capitalists and angel investors and obviously people buying the token and stuff like that. But that, to me, is better than everything just being reliant on the people building Ethereum layer 1. Splitting up those concerns, that bazaar versus cathedral model that I've spoken about, that has always been the best path forward for me. And I think we're seeing the results of that. We're seeing the fruits of that labor over the last few years come to bear with all of the layer 2 kind of activity that we're seeing lately, not just from a fundamental activity point of view, but also from a social thing, where the entire Ethereum ecosystem is aligned on making layer 2s the best that they can be, and layer 1 is being upgraded for that, which is just a lot of positive externalities that fall off that there. But yeah, anyway, you can go check out Mark's tweet. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, staying on the topic of L2's Raul, who works at Optimism works at Arbitrum here at Off-Chain Labs, put out a tweet today talking about their bold proving system here. So as you guys know, Arbitrum is an optimistic rollup, so they use fraud proofs, and Raul just gave a short tweet thread here about what happens when a fraud proof is submitted and how that game is actually played and what the end state is. So I highly recommend going and giving this tweet thread a read for you to check it out. But I do find it interesting that I was thinking about this while reading this with this tweet thread, which, as I said, I'll link in the YouTube description below, that when you look at the ecosystem today in terms of optimistic rollups versus ZK rollups, there really is only two optimistic rollups that are relevant, right? And that is Optimism and Arbitrum 1. Now, you have to split that out, though, because Optimism isn't just the OP mainnet anymore, right? It is the OP stack. It is Base. It is Zora. It is Avo, right? There's a bunch of these chains that are building on there. Same is true for Arbitrum, where they have Arbitrum 1, and then they have other Arbitrum chains that can fall off of that. Arbitrum Nova is a Validium, so it's, from my understanding, not going to be using fraud proofs, but the thing is that, yes, there may only be two core teams working on optimistic rollups right now, but those two teams are building software for people to build their own optimistic rollups on top of that. And then obviously Arbitrum already has fraud proofs in place. It's permissioned right now, but they're decentralizing that out and making it permissionless with this bold thing. And then Optimism is working on fraud proofs. I gave an update the other day on their fraud proofs, which is the Canon thing that they're building, which will be available to the whole OP stack once it's built out. And then really, it remains to be seen. I do still think that these ecosystems are just going to change to validity proofs or ZK proofs eventually and upgrade to that once there is something that is secure and reliable for them to upgrade to. And then we'll really just be in a ZK world at that point, which I think was always going to be the end game. It just came a lot faster than people thought it would. And I think it's taken everyone, I guess, like by surprise. And also the funding for it has been just astronomical. I think that because the ZK stuff started being talked about in the bear market, the last bear market, not this bear market. It started being talked about in like, I guess 2019, 2020, and there wasn't that much funding going around at the time. But then we had the bull market happen in 2021, and a lot of funding came in. And I think that's pushed it forward. Obviously, teams like Polygon acquired a lot of ZK teams and basically gave them unlimited funding to just go work on ZK stuff, which is why we've come so far now. So I think that's still the end game. But in the meantime, there is a lot of work still being done on the optimistic roll-up specific things like fraud proofs, which, as I said, you can check out Raul's tweet thread here about their bold proving system here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, again, sticking on the L2 theme, Aztec has announced today that they will have decentralized sequences. So they say here, today we're excited to announce that after significant debate, we have selected a final design from Aztec's sequencer selection request for proposals, which is called Fernet, and this is going to be a fully permissionless random leader election protocol. So they say here, at Aztec, we are fully committed to permissionless at launch. This means that unlike most layer 2 networks today, Aztec will allow anyone to run infrastructure just like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you can read the full announcement in this blog post here. Now, I think this is really cool because if Aztec can launch their fully encrypted, fully private layer 2 as a stage 2 layer 2, like as you guys know, L2 beat lists out the stages, but if they can launch it as a stage 2 from the get-go, that is a huge unlock for the Ethereum ecosystem because you guys know that most rollups are currently at stage 0 or stage 1. There's very few, layer 2s generally that are at stage 2. Like if I bring up the L2 beat site here, you can actually see which ones are at stage 2. It's really only D-Gate here, which doesn't really have much activity happening at all, and Fuel V1, which has basically no activity on it at all here. The rest fall into the stage 0/stage 1 kind of bucket here, and most of them I think are stage 0. So if Aztec can launch as a stage 2 a layer 2 because they have fully permissionless proving and fully permissionless decentralized sequences and validators and all that stuff that falls into it, that would be incredibly bullish, I think. And I'm generally very bullish on what Aztec's building because it's building around privacy here, but very cool to see them announce that they've chosen something today, which you can read about. As I said, I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but it is called Fernet. So if you see anyone talking about Fernet, they're talking about this, and they detail, why they chose it, deep dive into it, acknowledging the teams that have helped with this sort of stuff. Espresso Systems is actually listed here. This is definitely one that I've talked about a bunch on the refuel before. But yeah, I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But I'm hoping that over the next couple of years, pretty much all of these projects can move to at least stage 1. I want to stop seeing stage 0, especially on ecosystems that are big. Like for example, OP Mainnet and Base, which are both built on the OP stack, are still stage 0 because there's no fraud proving system, right? If they had fraud proofs in place, they'd, I think, go to stage 1. Or at least be very close to stage 1. I would very much love to see no stage 0s on this list, or at least none of the relevant ones, none of the ones that have a lot of activity being a stage 0, at least over the next maybe 12 to 18, 24 months. And then obviously, we want everything to be at stage 2 eventually, and we especially want the biggest roll-ups to be at stage 2, or the biggest layer 2s to be at stage 2, because that is definitely the most important stage to be at there. But we'll get there, I think. Some of them will launch from the get-go as a stage 2, like Aztec, for example. They probably will launch like that. Some of them will launch as a stage 1. A lot of them will launch as stage 0, but I think the end game is what matters. As long as they can get to stage 2 eventually, and eventually not being 5-10 years out, I'm talking over the next couple of years, I think that is definitely good enough, and that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing play out. But anyway, as I said, you can go check out Aztec's announcement for yourself. We'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so just a tweet here from Austin Griffith, who is a legendary builder in Ethereum. So he said here, Speedrun is a curriculum for learning how to build on Ethereum. He said, we just upgraded all the challenges to the latest toolset with all of the different kind of toolsets that you can see here, such as Rainbow Kit, VM, TypeScript, and with your choice of Hard Hat or Foundry. So if you're interested in learning Ethereum development, this is basically your one-stop shop. So you go to speedrunethereum.com, and it has guides on how to basically interact and learn to program on Ethereum, learn to build smart contracts on Ethereum, learn how Ethereum works under the hood. This is one obviously for the developers out there, but you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, as I said, Austin Griffith is legendary in the Ethereum builder space. He's been doing this sort of stuff for many years now, and he's all about just building, right? I think that he's a very high signal, low noise person. I've never really seen any noise from him. He just wants to build. He just wants to provide tools for people to build with as well, and provide guides like speedrunethereum.com for people to interact with, and to make building on Ethereum and learning how to build on Ethereum a gamified experience, which is exactly what is happening here. So you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, I think I'm going to cut it there for today. It's a bit of a shorter episode. That's because I'm doing the episode earlier in the day today. But yeah, just a friendly reminder that there will be no refuels for the next 3 days. So no refuel for Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And I'll be back Monday with probably an extra long episode to cover everything that's happened. There is a big announcement being teased on Twitter right now that I wish I could have covered tomorrow, because it's happening tomorrow. But I think I know what it is. So there's a team called Eclipse that is building a Solana virtual machine rollup that is going to be built on Ethereum, of course. So I think that's going to be a big announcement tomorrow that's going to get the Twitter sphere riled up, but I'll cover that on Monday once it's announced. But yeah, they've been teasing it on Twitter the last few days, so I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to be announced tomorrow. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, actually, because as I said in the past, I think Solana's technology is very cool, but I feel like it would be very cool as a roll-up. So we're going to see how that shakes out there, but I'm sure that's not going to be the only major announcement that happens over the next few days. But as I said, I will cover it all when I'm back on Monday. So that'll be it for today. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all on Monday. Thanks everyone.